Lortorios.
Hey, you are listening to Journey to Attorney, where we break down bar exam topics in plain English with real life examples and no fluff. So, going right into it, today we are talking about how agency relationships are created. Now, this is foundational stuff for agency and it's a high frequency essay topic. So, let's just get into it so you know what you're looking for. Okay, so first off, what is an agency relationship? Well, at its core, an agency relationship is when one person, called the agent, acts on behalf of another person called the principal. So think of it like this. Let's say you tell your friend to go buy a car for you and they go handle it. They test drive, they negotiate, they sign the contract, all on your behalf. Well, that's an agency relationship. But the catch is that you need to be looking out for is an agency relationship only exists legally when there are three elements present. And those elements I like to call the ABCs of agency. It just works out literally so perfectly, right? So the first one, which is the A, is assent. And that just means that both sides agree. So whether it's formally or informally, both sides agree to the relationship. So this can be a spoken agreement, it can be a written agreement, or it can even be shown through behavior. Agency or having the assent to an agency doesn't require a written contract signed and dated and all those things or any specific words. Sometimes just a nod and the execution of a task can do the trick. So let's say you ask your assistant to go buy some stamps for you and she buys it. Well, that action is essentially the assent. She's done the thing you asked her to do. There's an agreement. So make sure you're looking for that agreement where both sides are agreeing to the agency relationship in some way or form. Moving on to B, which is the benefit. The benefit stands for where the agent's actions must primarily benefit the principal, okay, not themselves. So in an agency relationship, and I probably should have started with this, you have the principal and you have the agent. So the principal is the one who the benefit of the relationship is for, and the agent is the one carrying out any of the tasks on behalf of the principal. But it's important that the benefit is for the principal, not for themselves. Otherwise, an agency relationship wouldn't be formed. So again, if your assistant was going out to buy stamps for you and it's your business and you're going to use it to send out marketing posts or anything for that matter, that benefit is for you and your business, not to them personally. They don't stand anything to gain from it, right? So with that benefit has to be there, and make sure when you're looking at fact patterns, you're checking that benefit is for the principal. The third one, which is C, the C in the ABCs, is control. So the principal has to have the right to control the way the agent does the job. So it's not the fact that they have to micromanage every move, but essentially they need to have the final say. So with the stamps example, you can tell your assistant, I need these stamps and these stamps only. This is the budget. You cannot go beyond this. With that, the agency doesn't have the liberty to go around and choose, well, actually, I'm going to get these super expensive ones or these ones that aren't the same as what you asked for, right? So again, it's not micromanagement. It doesn't have to be this extreme degree of control, but what it needs to be and what you need to be looking for is that the principal at the end of the day has the final say. And we'll get into some nuances as we go through agency, but just remember that you need that element of control. So with that, you have the ABCs. You need assent between the parties, you need the benefit to be for the principal, and you need the control that needs to be in the hands of the principal, ABC. And once you have those three things, then an agency relationship exists. So one thing that I want you to remember also is that money doesn't need to change hands. You don't need a written contract, and it doesn't matter what you're identifying or calling the relationship. Essentially, even if somebody's saying, well, yeah, we're working together, if you look at the ABCs and they exist, that forms an agency relationship legally. So just remember that the parties don't have to say, oh, we are explicitly forming an agency relationship. You just need those ABCs. Okay, so now we're going to move into the types of agents. There are three types of agents that would come up on the bar exam. And although it's not as cool of an acronym as ABC, but you have UGS. UGS is that's basically what it spells out. So you have a universal agent, you have a general agent, and you have a special agent. So remembering and understanding the difference between these types of agents is important in analyzing whether they're acting beyond the scope of the agency that they've been given. So let's just go into those definitions. With a universal agent, you want to think broad, okay, like universal. This person would have broad authority, and essentially in most cases they can handle everything that the principal could handle. So it's almost like power of attorney stuff. So when you think universal, when you see someone who has the ability to act just as if they were the principal, think universal agent. Universe. The universe is massive, right? Universal agent. That's the way I remember it. So that's the first one, the U in UGS. And then you have general agent. So with general and specific, sometimes you need to really look at the facts to see which one they are. For me, it was a bit of a hazy one, just thinking, wait, is this general or is this special? So I'll give you the example so you can break down and understand what is what and who is who. But with a general agent, they would handle ongoing stuff for a particular purpose. So you can think of, let's say, a general store manager. They run a store daily. They have a particular purpose, but it's ongoing. So even though you don't know the nitty-gritties of what that general agent is doing, their purpose, their particular purpose, is to run the store. And all the things that come under running the store would be under that particular purpose. So they're general, doing something ongoing, but it's for a particular purpose. Now, where this differs from a special agent is more narrow, far more narrow, and they are really there to do one specific thing or handle one specific transaction. Just like, let's say you're hiring someone to sell your house. That's a specific agent. And even where that time span might go on for months, maybe years sometimes, the difference between a general agent and a special agent is that special agent has one specific task to do. It's one transaction. Whereas running a store is not one transaction. It's an ongoing thing with multiple transactions. Whereas a special agent, think special is specific, okay? Think about the specie in both special and specific. That's just how I remembered it personally. I underlined the specie in special and the specie in specific so that I can really just remember it's one specific thing. Selling a house is one specific thing. They're not running the selling of multiple properties. They're not running something that's ongoing. It's one specific transaction. And so that's what makes them a special agent. Once that house is sold, the agency relationship would be over. And we're going to go into termination and how agency ends in just a moment. But I really just wanted to focus on that because it's something that used to trip me up. And if it used to trip me up, it could also trip you up. So, or maybe not. Maybe it's like, duh, this is obviously clear how they're different. But I just wanted to focus on that. So you have the universal agent, think broad, think universe. You have the general agent, so ongoing, general. And then you have the special agent who deals with the specific things, those one-time transactions. All right. So moving on to how agency relationships end. They don't always last forever. Sometimes in the case of a special agent, they could end in a few days. So there are a few ways that an agency relationship can end. And again, when you are looking at fact patterns, you won't necessarily see this agency relationship was terminated because this contract came to an end and this person rescinded. No, sometimes it might just be through the conduct or the things that is being said. So you need to pay attention to the facts and understand if the relationship has ended. So one way is through termination of the agreement, where one person says, or either party says, I'm done, don't want to do this anymore, I don't like it, and I don't want to be your agent or the principal, whichever way. If one party or either party ends the relationship, then it has terminated. Sometimes where there's a contract, you have to think of those contract rules, whether they are able to terminate or if they have to give notice. But essentially, when one party says they're done, then the agency relationship can't continue because you won't have that assent, benefit and control, specifically the assent. Another way is where a time period ends. So let's say it was a 1 week contract to do one thing or a set of tasks in 1 week, then that end of the time period ends the agency automatically. Another way is if somebody dies or becomes incapacitated, so they're unable to mentally play the role or do what they have to do, then that agency relationship wouldn't exist, because again, an element may be missing. If, the person is no longer with us, how can they perform their duties, or how can they receive a benefit? And then another thing to think about is, even when an agency relationship ends, in some states, a third party must be notified first if there is something called apparent authority, which we'll get to in another episode. But the third party needs to be notified for that apparent authority to officially end. And we'll go into that. Just put a pin in it if you haven't studied apparent authority yet. But it's something that is required in some states, and you may need to throw in your analysis in an essay just so that you can pick up those extra points. So essentially, with apparent authority, even if the agency has rightfully ended, the agent might still appear to have authority to these third parties unless the principal tells the world or these third parties otherwise. So that's how you get those apparent authority issues. You think, well, apparently he was your agent because he showed up and asked me to sign this contract. It was apparent to me that he was. And so without that principal stepping in and saying, hey, actually, this agency relationship has ended, do not sign anything with that person on my behalf because they are not my agent any longer. So in some cases, the principal has to communicate that where there is apparent authority. All right, so just to recap and go over what you need to remember for the creation of an agency relationship. 1, agencies require the ABCs to be valid, the assent, benefit and control elements. 2, it doesn't matter what the parties are calling it or if there's a written agreement. As long as that ABC exists and you're able to show that, then an agency relationship has been formed. 3, you need to know the types of agents and how much authority they usually have, and that would really help with analyzing whether an agent is acting beyond the scope of authority. And 4, termination can happen by notice, time, death or incapacity, but also be mindful of where third party notice is required in certain states when it comes to apparent authority. All right, so that's a wrap on this episode. You now know how to spot an agency relationship and what makes it official. In the next episode, we'll cover actual and that apparent authority. In other words, what an agent can actually do on the principal's behalf. So I hope this helped. If it did, please share it with a study buddy. And remember, you can play it while you're cooking, while you're walking, or even half asleep. That repetition really plays a role in our end results. But remember, you've got this. And as always, I'm rooting for you.
Lord Torio.